At the NBA trade deadline in 2021, the Bulls, under new management of Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Ebersley, decided to make their first blockbuster move of a trade after assessing the roster the previous regime had assembled, realizing this team, while young and rebuilding, needed to make drastic changes to the roster, most notably in finding an actual starting level caliber center. And as such, they decided to trade for all-star big man Nikola Vucevic in exchange for 2 first-round picks, Wendell Carter Jr. and Otto Porter Jr. And while Vucevic was an all-star that season, his trade value was at its peak. Since joining the Bulls, it hasn't panned out to what the new regime had initially anticipated, because while Vucevic has still been a productive center for them, as well as being a durable and available player to play, unlike Wendell Carter Jr., the fact of the matter is Vucevic hasn't been the all-star type player the Bulls traded for, which obviously is disappointing for Bulls fans considering the amount you had to give up to get him. But despite Vucevic and his overall performance relative to expectations being underwhelming, I feel like it's gotten to the point where the hate for Vuce coming from Bulls fans is starting to get a little out of control. And I think it's time we have an honest conversation about the big man, a fair and honest conversation about the value he brings to the team while also being critical of some of his weaknesses, which we'll dive into further. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Real quick though, guys, do you like making predictions? I'm actually going to make a prediction right now. From this point on, Vucevic will actually shoot above 30% from 3 for the rest of the year, which isn't saying much, shouldn't be a hard ask, but the dude is shooting 26% from 3, so it's a big jump in and of itself for Nikola Vucevic. Mark it down, book it, it's going to happen, do what you need to do. But if you like making predictions, doing player props or fantasy, all that good stuff, and you want to win some money on the side, and I know you've heard about these guys before, but if you haven't, you're going to want to check out Underdog Fantasy. Let me tell you about the app and my personal favorite that I use on the app, NBA Pick'ems. With Pick'ems, you can pick higher or lower on most player stats and win money based on the ones you get right. You pick higher or lower and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night if you do 5 pick'ems and you get them all right. If you think Vucevic is going to score more than 20 points against the Raptors, which can be possible, they don't have Jakob Poeltl, then select higher and you can win some money. And guys, they're offering viewers of this channel an exclusive offer. If you use the promo code BullsCentral, you'll get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Who doesn't want free money, right? It's really that simple. Also, a great way to support the channel as well. I'll leave a link to the site and the code in the description if you're interested, and let me know what picks you guys end up making. Now, I think most, if not all, Bulls fans will agree, including myself, by the way, that the Vucevic trade has not worked out for the Bulls. Hindsight is always 20/20, but looking at it near 3 years later, the Bulls got the shorter end of the stick in the deal. Part of it is because Vucevic himself has underperformed relative to the star player he once was, and the other part is just the overall roster construction that has impacted Vucevic's usage and overall play. Here's the thing I like to remind Bulls fans of though, because I often hear that this was the worst fleecing of the century and that how could the Bulls possibly have traded Vucevic for that much even at that time? As in, despite the fact that Vuce had just been named an all-star, how could they have traded that much for him? Sometimes I feel like as Bulls fans, we are very short-sighted and have very short-term memory. I can't tell you the countless amount of Bulls fans, yes, including myself, that were ranting and raving about how great this trade was. Bulls fans were ecstatic that we finally made a big move and started acting like a big market team. People could care less about those first round picks at the time, because the expectation was, well, the Bulls should be able to make the playoffs now and those picks will be mid-first rounders. And so many Bulls fans were out on Wendell Carter Jr., saying he was too soft, couldn't handle pressure, couldn't stay healthy. All those things still remain true, by the way. So many people love this move, even though they won't admit it now. And it made sense. Like, if you look at what Vucevic was as a player at that time, a high-scoring, elite rebounding big man, a big man that could pass, spread the floor because he was shooting 40% on high volume at over 6 attempts per game at that time, a true shooting percentage of 56, averaging 24 and 12. Like, there was a reason Vucevic was an all-star that year. He was a beast. Now, was some of it a bit inflated because he was on an average Magic team as the #1 option? Sure, to an extent, but for Vucevic's production, being an all-star, a durable all-star that rarely gets hurt, and was on, at that time, a favorable contract, 2 first-round picks and a young player is the going rate for an asset like that. You can say it was a bad trade after the fact because of everything that has transpired after Vucevic's performance declining and the front office not building a great roster that maximizes their players' skills, but at the end of the day, just looking at the trade in a vacuum, the Bulls paid what Vucevic was worth at that time. Like, let's not forget that guys like DeJounte Murray, a fringe all-star, was traded for 3 first-round picks. Not 2, but 3. And Rudy Gobert, 5 first-round picks. You have to put things into perspective of what Vuc's value was at the time of the trade relative to the overall landscape of the NBA market. Orlando capitalized on Vucevic's trade value being at its peak and not also being a part of their long-term plans. The biggest mistake on the part of the Bulls making that trade, even with Vuc playing like he was as an all-star, was his age. He was 30 years old at the time of the trade. And you'd have to think that even though Vuc was a durable player and had consistently been putting up those kind of numbers, whenever a player passes 30, there is always a risk of them falling off in terms of their production and impact on the court. And it was obviously a desperate push to be relevant and make big changes under the new management. Now, the trade itself aside, because even though I get the disappointment and frustration in Vucevic, especially this season, especially after the Bulls gave him that fat contract extension to the tune of 3 years, $60 million, I get all of that. But this notion that Vuc is trash and not even a starting level center in the NBA is inherently flawed. The Vucevic hate, like I said, has gotten out of control. Vuc is a flawed player, and he's having a subpar season. He's shooting threes at a horrible rate, one of the worst three-point shooters in the entire league at the moment, especially at the volume for which he's taking threes. He's shooting threes the worst of his career since he started actually taking threes, as Vuc didn't really start becoming a higher volume three-point shooting big until his 6th or 7th season in the NBA. You also compound that with the fact that Vucevic is having one of his worst seasons in finishing at the rim, missing little floaters at point-blank range. He's shooting 47% from the field overall, which isn't terrible, but more surprisingly is he's shooting 65% on shots from within 3 feet, which is the lowest of his career since 2017. And while Vucevic still remains one of the better rebounders in the game, his rebounding has dropped a bit, both in terms of rebounds per game, but more so his rebound percentage. And obviously Vucevic, like I said, has his flaws on defense, never really been known for his defense, but it feels like that has been especially the case this season with how slow he is to defend the pick and roll, getting outworked in the post, slow to get over on closeouts. So yes, all of these things are problems and why I say Vucevic is a flawed player. But I think what people often forget when it comes to Nikola Vucevic is, one, his ability to impact the game in more ways than just his scoring, which let's not sit here and act like 17 points per game and 10 rebounds is nothing, but more so than just his rebounding and scoring is his ability to act as a hub for the offense with his high-level court vision. Vucevic is one of the better passing big men in the league. His playmaking in the post isn't a skill that just grows on trees that you can easily replace, and his overall IQ when it comes to making the right plays on offense is unmatched. For a higher passing big man and one that has high usage overall, Vucevic rarely turns the ball over either. In fact, he's actually turning the ball over at the lowest rate of his career since his rookie season when he only played 15 minutes per game. Vucevic has the best assist to turnover ratio of his career so far this season and is top 5 among centers in the NBA in that category. Don't get me wrong, I love Andre Drummond. And Drummond offers a skill set and excels at things Vucevic doesn't, like his offensive rebounding and is better overall at protecting the rim, but we saw how limited the offense was when Drummond was starting those few games that Vucevic was out. The ball wasn't moving as much, the paint was getting clogged, little floor spacing, and no playmaking in the paint. Also, random stat, Vuc is actually shooting a career best from the free throw line this season at 87%. Not that he shoots that many free throws in general, but it's worth noting. But look, the point is, as Bulls fans, I feel like we often get wrapped up in this narrative that Vuc is a disaster, a below average center, one of the worst starting centers in the league because of just how frustrated we are with this team's performance overall and how that trade, the Vucevic trade, was the catalyst of accelerating the Bulls' timeline prematurely. It's what has led us to where we are today, and I feel like a lot of the frustration and anger is being taken out on Vuc more so than it should. Not saying that some of that anger towards Vucevic isn't justified, because Vuc absolutely could be better. He is to blame for some of the Bulls' struggles, and he is to blame for some of his decline in performance. But this is more so on the front office than anything, for the roster they constructed and also the coaching staff for not utilizing Vucevic to his strengths. Vuc going from a first option to a third option around players that are ball dominant and ISO heavy guys was never going to set him up for success. But even despite all that, Vuc has still managed to be a reliable and available scoring option and a high-level rebounder on a nightly basis. Throughout his Bulls tenure, he's averaging 18 and 11 and 3.4 assists per game over 223 games. It's not all-star worthy, but it's solid, and using Vuc as a scapegoat for the Bulls' problems has never made sense to me when there are so many other factors and bigger issues that we should be complaining about here. Just my take on the matter. I would love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.